Mm, Hi, welcome to Seriously Pointless Podcast. Hi, welcome to Seriously Pointless Conversations, a podcast about all your nerdy and geek things throughout time and your hug adverse friend at hug adverse humans.
What?
Hugging adverse humans. I don't know. Hugging anti-hugging humans.
I don't know, reverse harem fantasies.
I didn't want to go that far with it.
What?
There's a bit of a reverse harem in
There's
this.
a little bit of one in
A
there.
little bit, but
It's not a full-blown harem
it's
anime,
definitely not.
I mean, there's like 5 guys.
I'm trying to think of a good one.
Series.
Let's say like 2 guys. Well, okay, I guess 3 guys, but
Keep going.
one of them ends up figuring out that she's more of a mother than not.
Hi, welcome to Seriously Pointless Podcast. Seriously Pointless Conversations, a podcast about all your nerdy and geek things
That's another thing I
across
want to talk about.
time and your gender confused Japanese men.
That works.
I mean, there's a lot of that. There's definitely a lot of that in here.
There is a fair bit of that.
Trying to think of what else.
The author for this definitely likes their feminine men and their manly women.
Yes.
I don't know why she likes that, but that is definitely a theme of this whole show.
Yeah,
Mhm.
everyone's got a thing, right?
Men. That's a
Everyone's got a
big
thing.
there.
All your cross-dressing fantasies.
Oh, welcome and all your
Well, yeah.
cross-dressing fantasies. Okay.
It's not like a show.
Welcome to Seriously Pointless Conversations about Culture, your Seriously Pointless podcast about all your nerdy and geek things across time and your traumatized families. I'm David, your host. I'm again joined by the other host, James. How you doing, man?
Disney and Pixar have nothing on this group.
That's right. Eat your hearts out, Disney and Pixar. And we are joined again today by the lovely Kelly. How you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. We brought Kelly in today because if you guys haven't noticed by the title of the episode yet, we figured we might want to have an expert and at least have somebody of the other gender that has a better opinion of these things than we do, obviously, because we are men and we don't speak of our emotions, do we, James?
No, of course not.
No emotions. Emotions bad.
Not unless I got at least 3 beers in me.
That's right. So today's topic, guys, which Kelly, obviously you're a huge fan of.
Yes.
Am I wrong? Okay.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about the wonderful anime/manga Fruits Basket. And so just a little bit of a brief history of Fruits Basket before we, or not a little history. Let's do a little bit of what we've been up to, James. Let's do that because we haven't seen Kelly in a while. I feel like
It's been a minute, yeah.
we need to hear what Kelly has been doing outside because nobody cares. Honestly, nobody cares what James and I have been doing. They want to hear what Kelly's been doing. Kelly, you want to go first?
Yes. So, WoW's dead now. So
Yes.
That's how long it's been since.
Hashtag peace.
Yeah.
Peace. You
That's
know,
right. Last time you were on, we were playing Classic
We
WoW
were
still.
playing WoW class. That
you
died.
moved on.
Now we're doing League
League,
of
right?
Legends is kind of our friends game. And we've started a family Minecraft server.
Do you want to throw out your main on League right now, or do you want to?
Well,
She doesn't want to commit. I know, because you have a couple favorites. I know
I have
you do.
a couple favorites. My 2 I play the most is Misfortune and Ash,
Yep.
bot lane. Because no one in our group wants to play bot lane. So.
I've told you I will try. If I get on, I will try whatever you guys want me to because I get on so infrequently. My talent doesn't really matter,
Okay.
honestly.
Well, then that's why we put you in the least impactful lane, which is
yeah, see? They're like, you can do the least amount of damage, and then I go Volibear on everybody, and for some reason I swing a game every once in a while.
Yes.
You win because you're a bear. We've
Yes.
established
A bar.
Yes.
A bar. So
People
you
forget you're a bear.
I do forget
this.
I'm
You
a
do
bear.
become quite unbearable afterwards, though.
It's okay. It's all about if you just knew the bare necessities of my personality, you would be okay with this. But so many bad jokes there off the bat. So obviously, Kelly, you said you've dropped WoW, you've played a little bit of League. We've got a Minecraft server. Have you been watching anything other than your beloved Fruits Basket, like anime wise?
Yes, a lot. We've we've been going through a lot
Well,
of different ones.
because-
we switched over to Crunchyroll
Yeah, that's
from
right.
Funimation, so we're exploring a lot of new ones. My favorite anime this season is the Spy Family.
Oh, I just started it.
Spy X Family.
It's
Spy
so
Family.
good.
It's really good. It's so
The
funny.
little girl is my favorite character in that whole show.
Mommy.
That is my favorite scene of the series so far in episode 2. When they're at the clothing shop and she's like, "Oh, woe is me, I am so sad, for I have no mommy."
I know. I'm like, this girl is my favorite person ever. So yeah, that is a great show. If you guys haven't seen that, it's Spy X Family. I think it's what it's called. It is a phenomenal show. Did it just come out on Crunchyroll
It
recently?
just came out on Crunchyroll. It's a simulcast for this season.
Yeah.
So yeah, the dub is up to 4 episodes, and I'm sure the sub is further than that. But.
They always get further in the sub. So, but yeah, I'm having a blast with that too. So, but that's a great recommendation for the audience, especially with this kind of thing, because that's a nice, like I would call a nice. We'll get into it a little bit more. That's a nice middle ground between shonen and shoujo a little bit, right?
Yep, it's a nice comedy. It's got fun pacing so far. Yeah, I think that's something.
Well,
it's
and it's
ridiculous and over the top.
It very much is. So obviously, I know since
less kid appropriate, Skeleton Knight is really good too.
The first 10 seconds is super inappropriate. I was like,
do I want to watch this?
That's at first I was like, I don't feel comfortable watching it, and then it moves on from it really quickly, and I'm like, okay, I'm a lot better with this now. I haven't gotten very far in it though.
Because to me, we've only watched a couple episodes, but to me, this show is about the contrast between a gritty world and a ridiculous protagonist.
Yes. And it's kind of very reminiscent of so I got reincarnated as a slime a little bit.
A little bit.
If that Goblin Slayer had a baby.
It's a lot more grittier than that, and I'm kind of enjoying it a little bit more because you know me, I like dark and Cthulhu-esque stuff. That's kind of my vein.
It's not as crazy and dark as Overlord.
No. I had to take a step back from that for a little bit because that got very edgelordy very quickly. So I was like, I'm going to step back from this. So, well, obviously we know that, so since you guys are married, I know James, you kind of do hang a lot. You watch a lot of same things, do a lot of same games as Kelly. Is there anything that you haven't been doing together or playing?
Tunic was great.
Oh, that is,
Even Yahtzee on Zero Punctuation didn't have anything bad to say about it.
No.
We'll probably have to do an episode on that one.
That would really.
You were playing that one too.
So that one came out pretty recently, probably I think it was last month.
This spring, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty recently on Xbox Game Pass. Which is where I picked it up. I don't know if you saw it on there. So really good.
A couple older games came to Game Pass, which would have been fun. Tunic, Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion.
I downloaded it already. It's sitting there. I'm waiting.
It's a hysterical hour and a half, 2 hours, and that's it.
That's all you need.
You play a turnip who has forgotten to pay the taxes on his family greenhouse, and who likes to tear up government documents.
Well, that's how you
kind of how it goes.
That's how you evade the government with tax and commit tax evasion, James. You just tear up the pages. They don't have any backups.
So I did that one, and Bug Snacks is on the Xbox Game Pass now. It's off the PlayStation.
I dabbled into it a little bit already.
I'm enjoying it a lot. I mean,
yes.
Is it Game of the Year material? No. But it's a fun.
Did it get Game of the Year?
No.
It's
a fun open world romp where you catch snack shaped things.
Yes.
And feed them to people who then turn into the snacks.
From what I've gathered, though, I was talking to my buddy Vizu at my old job. Whenever he played it originally on the PlayStation, he said it actually has a really dark turn, like about halfway through. It's not cute and cuddly like we think it is, James.
It's getting there for me. I've done the first kind of 3 areas, and I'm getting ready to move into the next 3 or 4 areas. So I'm about halfway through it.
Apparently, they just it's a sharp turn after you kind of start to feel it, and then it just smacks you upside the head with a stick and says, "Welcome to I don't know, the end of the world," or something like.
Yeah, I think that's the way this is going because it's a little too cutesy, but the themes are a little bit too mature in some places.
Yes,
this is going to be bad.
I'm interested to see what it's going to do. I really want to get into it a little bit more and kind of come back with you. But we will definitely have to do that one as well as Tunic. Which, talking about that, have you been watching, before I get on to my side of stuff, have you been watching anything outside of what you've been watching, Kelly? Because I know you guys like to do that in the evening.
That's been the bulk of it. We watch most of the same shows.
It's kind of
I would say those are the 2 standouts so far this season. We've dabbled with a couple other ones.
Yeah.
like the witch who killed slimes for 100 years and maxed out her levels or something is kind of cute, but it doesn't really carry.
Yeah.
It's not hooking you.
No.
There's a lot of shows that have a good first or second episode, but they can't really carry it for the rest of the series.
It's kind of what I figured.
That's kind of
So
what it's feeling like this season. But those two were definitely good.
yeah,
And I think the Bookworm show is supposed to get a second season.
the Bookworm show.
Coming
I've never
up.
seen that one
So,
yet.
The Ascent of a Bookworm, that was another one.
It's
that
another
I really,
Ascent.
Oh, I have.
really
I
enjoyed.
did see it on not Crunchyroll, Funimation.
It
You guys
was-
were
it was
watching
on
it.
The first
Funimation.
26 episodes
And,
are great.
and James poo-pooed it at first, and I had to make him watch it, and he ended up
Lies and
really
slander.
loving it.
Lies and slander.
It said if it's not
It does
recorded,
kind of start slow.
fake news. No proof. No proof whatsoever.
And I think the rumor is that Magician's Bride might be getting another season soon too.
third
Is
season.
you talking about Mega's Bride?
Maggie's Bride,
Maggie's
yeah.
Bride.
Dude, don't tell Jackie. Jackie will all. She loved that show to death.
We just rewatched it, and it's even better.
It still holds up.
After
Did
it.
they
Yeah.
redo it?
No, I think there's been a couple of OVAs
Okay.
that came out that I don't think have been dubbed in English. At least they're
Okay.
not on Crunchyroll. They're like in Portuguese and Spanish, so maybe Jackie will watch it in Spanish. But
She probably. So honestly, if I do that, if I put it in Spanish and like have subtitles in English, we could probably watch it. She would probably be down with that. So, which that's a fair, I guess a fair transition there. So for a fair trade off for the two of us. So, but yeah, that would be something to get us to start watching it because we're kind of floundering right now with stuff we watch in the evening because we just got done with Moon Knight because she wants to kind of catch up with all the Marvel stuff. So we were watching Moon Knight, which I was okay with that. It wasn't like standout crazy great for me. They did a couple things in it that I just wasn't into.
isn't he supposed to be like a psychopath? Like
No, he's
schizophrenic?
supposed to be kind of like a schizophrenic that has
But then it
multiple.
turns out his alternate personality is like a superpower. And,
Yeah, like multiple. Well, he has multiple personality disorder, and so each of them, they all have access to the Moon Knight powers, but each of them have different skill sets, right?
Oh yeah, it seems like he could have like a Rorschach thing going on.
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, you could make
Yeah.
a dark and gritty superhero. That seems
Well-
like a perfect modern superhero fodder.
Oh yeah, and he's very much a vigilante in it, like hardcore. And in the comics, it definitely has a harder and harsher turn towards things, and it's much grit. It's a lot grittier, and I think they do a lot better of playing off that like, hey, he's trying to like work through all of his stuff, and in this one, it's just. They just don't do a very good job with it. And I think they could have done a lot better. And the downside is I know that Oscar Isaac, the guy that plays Moon Knight, probably isn't going to come back to play Moon Knight. And so this is probably going to be a one and done. It's not very good. Other things we watched, if you get a chance, ask Jackie about healing crystals and the weird JonTron show we watch. It's bizarre. You guys know who JonTron is?
No.
My brother makes me watch one occasionally. I need to watch it. That one's been popping up on my feed actually.
It's so
That's
JonTron.
like the super alternative medicine. episode or
Yes,
something.
she thought it was hilarious.
Okay.
There's literally a guy he basically tries to say, he did a thing, but he goes, healthcare bills have been, health bills have been going through the roof, and so I've gotten off my network and I've gotten on this alternative network, and now I have only 3 providers that I can go to. And it's funny, and he goes into these super awkward, like weird medicines. Like there's one where the guy just stares at you and it just heals you. And I'm like, and there are people paying for this bullshit?
Wow.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
if you get, I'm telling you, it's a gem.
Okay.
She laughed
I'll have
so
to watch
hard.
that one. That
Yeah.
sounds pretty
She usually is kind of like, oh, these are kind of dumb and kind of goofy. She laughed. I haven't seen her laugh that hard in so long. So, and that's coming from a man that tries to make her laugh every day. So,
Well,
and usually doesn't fly. But other than that, we actually went on a movie date. We went and saw Doctor Strange in the multiverse of madness, which she really enjoyed as well.
good.
I think I'm a lot more skeptical because I know the characters and I like the characters, and she's an outsider and she is just absorbing it from like the movie and like cinematic area, and she's loving it. So she had a really good time with it. I enjoyed it, but I wasn't like blown away by it. But yeah, that's what we've been watching. What I've been playing. I started playing Tunic. I got stuck at a certain point. I got mad. I stopped for about a day and a half.
Some of those boss fights are pretty punishing.
there's only so many like fire. I call them firecrackers. They're dynamites or whatever they call it. There's only so many times you can try and do that, and then it's just like the boss fights just make you so mad because it doesn't do anything to them or it does very little damage. And I'm like, I just have to. I got to get better, James.
You got to find your upgrades.
I just got to get better.
Get good scrub.
I didn't even know how to upgrade my health and my attack stuff until like after I got to the second, like the first dark area, like the underworld area.
Really?
James, I didn't even know. I was like, what are these flowers? Why do I pick up these flowers? What are they for?
These things?
Yeah, what are they for? And I didn't look. I was trying not to like look up stuff.
The garden must have been pure suffering for you then.
Oh my god! It was. I got very mad.
You're supposed to have 3 strength upgrades by the time you get to that guy. Like it even says it in the book. Be at least this strong before you start fighting this thing.
I was trying to figure stuff out just by looking at it because it's not in like English or even any normal text, and some of it is. But like, and I didn't want to look up stuff because I didn't want to ruin the story for me. So I was like, this makes me so mad. So I finally broke down and looked up stuff, and I was like, okay, and it's gone significantly easier. Now I've looked it up. So
this game has a mechanic where all the characters and stuff speak a different language except for like random English words.
Oh.
But as you go through the game, you find the pages of the game's manual in the world.
Yep.
And it explains how you're supposed to be doing things as you go. Like wait till you get the page that tells you how to use your teleporters.
I know the bright yellow things are for the little yellow squares are there for a reason, but I don't know what to do, James. And it's making me so angry.
You gotta find the page.
Okay, I'll get to the page at some point. But other than that, I'm trying to think of what else I have. I've been playing Bugsnax a little bit, which we kind of talked about it a little bit. The other thing on my table right now, I've got Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. It's the one that Critical Role, they actually had a hand in it. If you like that stuff, it's an RPG and it's based in kind of that similar universe. But once you start listening to the voices, every single member of Critical Role is in it. They do all the main characters. Matt Mercer is he's the main narrator for the Overworld.
I might play it. Yeah.
Just for that, it's on Game Pass.
Okay.
It's a nice. It's the complete edition, so it's a nice beefy game. You can easily probably put 90 hours if you do all the DLC easily. So that'll be if you want to do like one-off game kind of like that. It's reminiscent of Baldur's Gate. Did you ever play that at all?
No.
It's very similar to that kind of like D&D over like top down kind of thing. So
I play that on the Xbox. Could watch that on the big TV.
It is very nice. So but yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to. Guys, like I said, that's a little bit what we went up to. If you guys want to email us in or shoot us text and stuff, let us know what you guys have been up to. DM all that kind of stuff. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We also have the email at the end of every episode. So if you guys want to send in anything, requests, tell us what you've been up to. I'd love to hear from you guys. We'd love to hear from you guys as well. Now, finally, after a long intro, we're having a bit of a change in the dynamic. We're not going to do news this week. I think we wanted to devote a lot of time and energy towards this one because this being one of Kelly's favorite animes and manga of all time, I figured we would do it due diligence, James.
Plus, it's no good news in spring season anyway.
Yeah, that is not wrong. So I'm going to do a brief synopsis of kind of like how it got started and a little bit of the show. I don't want to go deep into it because I know there's a lot of stuff we can get into on it, and I don't want to ruin it for our viewers ahead of time.
Yes.
So Fruits Basket is a Japanese manga series written and illustrated by, I'm going to butcher her name, and I apologize, ma'am, ahead of time, Natsuki Takaya. And it was serialized in a semi-monthly Japanese shoujo and manga magazine, Hana to Yumi, published by Hakusensa from 1998 to 2006. The series title comes from the name of a popular game played in Japanese elementary schools, which is alluded to in the series.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't pick up on that.
Obviously, that's a cultural thing. It's kind of like if you ask somebody about, hey, have you ever played jump rope or what's a good one? Tetherball. I don't know. Do they have tetherball in other countries? I'm sure they have something similar, but I mean, there's always like those games, in other countries.
Kids games.
But so Fruit Basket, a brief synopsis of Fruit Basket is that it tells the story of Toru Honda, an orphan girl who, after meeting Yuki Koro,
Yuki Kyo
Kiyo,
and
And-
Shigure.
Shigure Soma, learns that 13 members of the Soma family are possessed by the animals of the Chinese Zodiac and are cursed to turn into their animal forms when they are weak, stressed, or when they are embraced by anyone of the opposite sex that is not possessed by a spirit of the Zodiac. As the series progresses, Taru learns of the hardships and pain faced by the afflicted members of the Soma family, and through her own generous and loving nature helps heal their emotional wounds. As she learns more about Toki and Kiyo and the rest of the mysterious Soma family, Taru also learns much more about herself and how much others care for her.
Which I do have to wonder if the whole turning into the animal thing was inspired by Ranma Half, which came out just before this.
Wow.
It
Yeah,
was
I didn't even think of
huge.
that.
It was huge.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. So let's start kind of like back, we did in previous episodes. Let's start with Kelly. Where did you first find Fruits Basket?
It was in high school. I was starting to kind of get into manga online, and as well as they started having them at like book fairs and stuff.
Oh, Scholastic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good callback there.
So this is was a series my friend had, and she let me borrow it. And then about 3 books in, I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to buy this whole thing.
The addiction came. That's what happened.
And for my birthday and Christmas, for like 3 or 4 years, as the books were coming out in the U.S., that was on my list every year.
I know that
Until
feeling
I got
very,
them.
very much so. I promise you, I had the same kind of issue whenever. I don't know if you, James, you've seen it. There's an X-Men series called Ultimate X-Men that I literally asked for every Christmas for like about 3 years.
It's got like character vignettes of like the people and their powers
Yep.
and stuff, and I think I read every single one of those too.
Yeah.
So I understand what you get to, and it's something that just hooks you, and you just enjoy it so much. And that's a great callback though for Scholastic though, like because so many things I don't think people understand, like, because I don't know if they even do those in schools anymore, but that really
They
kind of
do. They
put
do have
that's
Scholastic
great
book
because that was a great experience to find something that you just maybe hadn't heard of yet. Because I know that's what pushed Harry Potter into the into the United States so heavily.
Yes.
Animorphs.
Animorphs, Captain Underpants for some of the younger guys that are a little bit younger than us. But I mean, that they did stuff like that all the time. They had posters and all kinds of stuff. And that's a great. I love that. That's kind of where you saw that from. So after kind of getting into the manga a little bit, did you know that they were making an anime?
Yeah, they actually made an anime before the current one.
Yep.
And it was horrible.
Yeah.
Don't watch it. They really messed up the story. It didn't make sense, and it was just not well done.
That was the one that aired from July 2001 to December 2001.
Yeah.
It was the 25th
It's not the
episode.
new one from 2019, I believe.
Yeah.
No, it was not good. But then the new one from 2019, much better. Still have some issues with it, but
We will dig
yeah,
deeper.
we would dig deep in that.
The author of the original manga would agree with you. He got the person who read the first one fired. So
Yes, because it was just not good.
That's right. So let me ask you this a little bit. So do you prefer the manga over 100%?
By far.
And I've noticed that with a lot of folks. I mean, it's just like anything, I guess. The written word, or even like comic books for that matter. I would consider comic books almost like a written word, almost because drawn even.
Yes.
Always the
It's
source
an art form in itself,
source material is always so much better than the adaptation, right?
It is, like we can get into like the differences between the two and what I didn't like, but it just has so much more, and the flexibility of how you can tell the story.
Yep.
Says things on its own, and for a manga, it's actually well written out in sequence. It's not like a serial, like making up things as you go. This one is pretty well, like they thought about how it was going to end at the beginning.
She had a plan.
You
mean it's not like a shonen?
It's not like most shonen, yeah.
Where we
just make it up as we kind of go, and correct the rules and just figure out how it works. No, this one is well written and well incorporated, and I don't feel like it was reflected how well that was into the anime.
Well, for example, something Kelly and I have talked about a fair bit is that in the original manga, a lot of the characters' stories and their character growth is kind of told piecemeal. Like each chapter will work on someone else, and it comes through, and you have a big character growth over the course of the whole series.
Yes.
In the anime, they have collected each person's story into a 1 to 3 episode kind of focus on them, which is fine. You kind of get their whole arc in one big burst, which is kind of fun. But then, like for example, Yuki's character arc comes like halfway through the new anime, but then he just kind of spontaneously regresses back to his previous personality, so he doesn't mess up anyone else's arcs that were happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
In the manga, they happened all simultaneously. In the anime, they made them sequential.
Mm-hmm.
And so
it made it seem
Kyo
like
doesn't get a moment until the very, very end.
So it made it seem like that things that were happening at the same time as other things were happening after. And so a lot of how the storylines intertwined with each other didn't really make sense.
Okay.
Like I said, like Yugi's storyline, they had to regress him because something happened after that this arc had completed. Should have been happening along the same time or before.
It's like, oh wait, we needed him to be a jerk for this scene, so he's just going to be a jerk.
He's going to be a jerk,
An explanation for why he's doing this.
That makes sense. So I'm assuming that for you, James, your introduction to this series probably came from Kelly, right?
Actually, funny story. This is how I found out that she was into anime and manga in the first place, because she didn't necessarily let that on when we first started dating. We actually bonded over Firefly originally, but the first
very acceptable.
Hey, perfectly normal.
Mal Reynolds, forever my heart thought. He goes Malcolm Reynolds, Dwayne Johnson, and then I'm gonna say now there's nobody else. That's just those two.
Those are the two.
Those are the only two I have right now.
Take my land.
Oh, maybe Wash. Maybe Wash is in there.
Wash is definitely up there. I mean, if a grown man can play with dinosaurs and pilot a spaceship, he deserves a place on the list.
That's like a leaf on the wind, motherfucker.
That's right.
Anyways.
But anyway, what I was saying was the first time I went to her parents' house, we went to her old bedroom, and she had this shelf with all these fruit basket manga. I'm like, the heck, you're into manga and anime. I guess that's something else we have in common.
To be fair, it's probably a lot better than walking in and seeing like just unicorn statues. Like I would probably I'm gonna back away very slowly if there's unicorn statues. Anime and manga, completely acceptable.
A pleasant surprise, right? There could have been anime. There could have been unicorn statues or like 30,000 frog plushies or something equally weird. But no, this was good. It was a pleasant surprise.
Not to hate on unicorn lovers or frog plushie lovers. It's just not our thing.
But no, like a lot of guys, I mean, I was vaguely aware that Fruits Basket was a thing. Like, it was so big that everyone's going to see a poster or an ad at some point growing up. Yeah. But no, I never took a second glance at it until the new series came out and Kelly insisted we had to watch it.
Well, I mean, you're a lot like I was, especially in high school. We got between you, Cole, Reese, and I'm trying to think of anybody else that was really heavy in anime.
But we did stuff like Trigun and Death Note.
Yeah, it was
Neon Genesis. I mean, it was,
but it was never purely a shoujin anime, right?
No, we never really did shoujo animes.
Okay, so for our audience, if you guys are unfamiliar with the terms that we're using, shonen is primarily a male-centric anime that's geared towards younger males, and shoujin is a shoujo. I apologize. Shoujo is a female center. It's an anime that's geared towards more younger female audience members, and they actually have it broken down in that way.
Even smaller.
So things like Fruits Basket, Sailor Moon, Cardcaptor Sakura.
Yeah, things like that.
Those are some stuff
where it's very to kind of go into that a little bit more. It's very
That one's kind of lampshading the genre. That one's for everybody.
to kind of break it down even more, so like it's very much so like in these series, it really kind of breaks it down like how they solve problems, right? Like in shonen, right, James? The way that they solve problems,
they communicate through their fists.
They communicate with their fists, and they beat each other up, and and then they build each other up by like beating each other up.
Exactly.
In shoujo, is shoujin?
Shoujo.
I want to make sure I get the terminology right. So in shoujo, correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly. It's more of like, okay, so we all have we all have problems just like they do in shonen.
Yeah.
But instead of beating each other up, we're going to build each other up and help each other fix our problems.
Fighting may be
In
part
general,
of it.
yeah,
but,
fighting might be part
but
of it.
generally,
Yeah.
they solve the problems ultimately by communicating
Yes.
about them.
And
Yeah,
you
is that
might
right?
be communicating while fighting.
That's right. But it's always a lot more. They talk
Yes,
and they
it's more about the talking and the
Yeah.
relationships and dealing with your relationships and your feelings and resolving issues through that way.
which, to be fair, that is how a lot of women solve their problems.
Yes.
It's not like guys, and that's why Japan's got a good handle on this. That's why they market these things to each other like that.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
but that's why I kind of get pulled away from shonen a little bit, and I kind of like get more towards the middle a lot now. And a lot more of the anime I've watched nowadays is I like that middle of the road a little bit.
Well, I think as the audience for anime has aged, they are marketing more things towards.
What are you talking about,
adults.
James? What are you talking about?
Well, there's a pretty clear divide now between stuff which is directed at little kids,
Yes.
stuff which is directed at teenage, either boys or girls,
Young
and
adult
stuff
type stuff, yeah.
and stuff which is directed more at like adult anime consumers.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
And so, I mean, there's a half a dozen puerile isekai that come out every season, which are clearly directed at stupid teenage boys, and then there's some which are clearly directed at teenage girls. I mean, there's a gradation.
They definitely have it broken up into that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's definitely a kind of a good way to break it down. I like how they break it because I know Japan is very much things have their place.
Yes. You
And
have
that's-
to fit in the box
there's
you-
correctly.
You definitely see that in their culture. So for me though, so Jackie actually got me into, so like a lot of anime, she kind of broadened my horizons as they were.
But the word for it.
Very much so. Very much so. She was very much into, people have probably heard this before, heard Jackie and I talk about it in previous episodes, Miyazaki films heavily.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Which that can almost be said, I could almost, I know Miyazaki really hates to put labels on things.
Yes.
And I would almost put those as almost like pseudo shoujo almost, because he has a lot of they're almost kind of,
They're more kind of just very young children
Yes.
in general.
yeah,
Or kind of family movies, I would
Yes.
say.
yeah. But at the same time though, dude, like a lot of the female protagonists, when they do try to like fix problems, it's not always like beating each other up, and it's
No.
there.
It's definitely not shonen.
It's definitely not there. It's so, like I said, it's got hints of that, but it's definitely, like you said, it's definitely its own thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's definitely its own thing. But anyway, so Jackie, she kind of, after she showed me that stuff, I was like, oh, it's actually an art form. It's just not dumb cartoons where people beat each other up, right? She kind of showed me a little bit of other anime, because she'd always been in Dragon Ball Z and kind of more of the shonen stuff whenever that stuff first came into the U.S. And she showed me Fruits Basket, the original Fruits Basket. And I was like, oh, this is kind of weird and kind of, I'm like, what is this? Why do I feel bad for these characters? This shouldn't feel
You're
bad.
supposed to.
They're not, this is weird. I don't like this. And then we ended up watching it all. And actually I enjoyed it quite a bit. And I kind of did the thing like you did, Kelly, is I started reading the manga, and I was like, wow, the manga is like way better.
Yes.
Way more information. Things make a lot more sense. And so I really started getting into the manga quite a bit. And I think I got about, because how many volumes are there? There's quite a few volumes.
24,
I think I got 6 volumes into it. And I think I fell off because of work or something like that. Because I was reading a lot of it online. I know it's blasphemous. I didn't buy it. I was reading it online on one of the special websites that I found.
Special websites.
Yes.
This was back in the dark age before things were widely available.
Yes. And it's probably actually during college because I couldn't afford to buy anything. So I did, and I have been meaning for years to get back to it. I know they have those monster volumes. I know you have it. Honestly, I would be probably okay with buying this because I know I would probably read it, and I know Jackie would probably read it. And I have a little part of me kind of hopes that like our kids would read it at some point later on.
Yes,
Later on.
Definitely an older, slightly more mature.
Yeah.
Like young
But then again,
adult.
there's a lot of stuff that I have in my collection that I'm like, we're gonna wait to read this stuff. So it's that's all piecemeal, but that's kind of the thought I would like to think about that. So, so we've kind of gone over how we've been introduced with it and kind of our kind of brief feelings about it. Let's start with I'm feeling. Do you want to go more into heavy differences between
Yes. We
the
can
manga
finish
and
that up
anime?
then- yeah, let's. Yeah,
Okay.
we can finish that up and then go with the other.
The themes
The other
or
parts.
or the giant overarching kind of issues, I guess we would say.
Yes.
Or let me say the one difference which I know.
Okay.
I think it's at volume 16 of the manga. There's an entire volume dedicated to Toru's mother and kind of her life and history and how her dad
Yes.
plays into things, which is just totally left out of the anime,
Yes.
which definitely meant that the ending of the series didn't hit the best it could have for me, because we had to pause and Kelly fill me in on details for me to understand what was going on for a good chunk of that.
Yeah.
And especially when they start getting into how almost every character was impacted by Toru's mom at some point before they even met, which was part of the emotional resolution of the whole thing.
Yep.
It really kind of stunk that they didn't manage to work some of that in. And that was a
Yeah,
problem.
because most of the story. That was the other big criticism, is that it was definitely a show made for the fans, and it was much better if you understood what was going on.
Well, it burnt a
Absolutely.
little bit more whenever they announced they're going to do a Fruits Basket spinoff, which is just about Toru's mom. It's oh, you didn't leave it out because you had space, you left it out because you wanted a spinoff.
So yeah, I'm hoping two together.
You gotta make more money, man.
I know, I'm becoming a curmudgeon. I would rather have one amazing show than two good shows at this point.
Get off my lawn, James.
Yeah.
Get off my lawn. Get off my nicely manicured anime lawn.
Exactly.
I'll send my robots after you.
Hey, giant mech is an art form.
Don't let anybody tell you differently. So Kelly, before we grow off into
the weeds again.
into the weeds with these guys, so what major differences do you or issues do you have between the two?
The issues of certain things that they chose to leave out, and they did this a little bit in the anime.
So you're talking about the original series in the manga, or you're talking about the new series from the 2019?
She's talking about
the new ones.
Okay,
We're going to ignore the 2001 series.
Okay.
Pretend it doesn't
Got
exist.
it. So anybody listening to that? 2019 is the series that we're listening to. A Fruits Basket. The before, those are called the before 4 times.
Yeah,
we don't talk about the before 4
4
times.
We don't talk it's just not worth.
This isn't
discussing.
like season 1 of Fullmetal Alchemist, which was good, but not the same thing. This is just bad.
It
in
was just
general.
bad.
That's understandable.
So the big thing that was left out was that almost all of the stories had kind of almost like nursery rhyme kind of little tidbits that were slightly related to the story.
Uh-huh.
So they had the Cinderella play that they kind of did that incorporated with what was going around. One of my favorite stories, I think they did have this one in the anime, was the onigiri. It's like a rice ball, and it has a piece of onigiri. That's how it is.
Yeah.
A piece of seaweed on the outside.
Yeah.
And she had a little nursery rhyme kind of story about that, about how and the lesson you were supposed to learn from it.
That's right. She does that pretty early on in the newer series, doesn't she? Yeah.
And of course, the Fruits Basket game.
Yep.
That was also kind of a nursery rhyme story that they kind of left, they mentioned it but left out. But throughout the whole series, there are just these little stories that they reference, and it's related to what's happening usually in that volume. Sometimes they'll reference old stories, like the Chinese Zodiac is referenced throughout.
Oh, heavily, yeah.
Heavily. And of course, their variation of the cat character.
Yep.
As well as there's some ghost stories referenced. There's some games, Poor Man, Rich Man game, or the Fruits Baskets game.
Oh, yeah. I remember
There's a
that
lesson
one.
to be learned with those. Just these little details that they kind of reference some of them in the anime, but they don't have the resolution of the lesson learned from.
Yeah, they don't flesh them out.
They don't flesh it
in
out,
the manga.
and especially because they've broken up everyone's the timeline of when these stories happen. Because all of those stories that are happening at the same time usually are related to kind of the moral of the story. Either they're rejecting it or accepting it or sidestepping it.
Yeah.
It's
It was a way of showing
issue.
how everyone is growing about the same issues.
Yeah, about the same issues and struggling
as
with
they
them
progress through the story.
as they progress through the story.
Okay.
And that isn't always clear in the anime, even though they tried really hard to incorporate some of the stories. They have some of them, but it's not as obvious, partly because of how out of sequence they made
I think
the story.
Let me ask you this: do you think that was an intentional thing? Because I know the author. Oh God, I'm blanking on her name again. Not Toru. That's her. Takia.
Mhm.
Do you think because she had a lot heavier hand in the new anime?
I think it
The
was the
storyboarding.
nature of how TV shows are made.
Okay.
Because they're made by season and then they're renewed by season.
Yeah.
And in order to you can tell it was cut up by seasons and not necessarily by overarching story.
You think it was more of a concession?
I think it was more of a concession he had to make in order to get funding in the production.
It also makes the show much more digestible for the average watcher.
Yes.
I mean,
because it connects the stories, like individual story arcs of persons, much better.
I mean, take a really awesome anime like Baccano, for example.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's a rush, but it can also be a bit of a frustrating experience because you don't understand what's happening at all until you're like 3/4 of the way through the series. And for a show that's about that type of suspense, it works. For a relational show like Fruits Basket, I can see why they wouldn't want to make an anime where you haven't even properly introduced some of the characters for 5 or 6 episodes.
And I think it's kind of this
bringing in one character at a time and digesting bits of their story helps introduce the characters and ground the series.
Yes, and it's just kind of a nature of the two different mediums is how they broke it up. You have to kind of do that way for it to make sense. I could see that. Yeah. It's easier to write it in this because you have so much extra space to do as much as you want, but you only have so many minutes. You have to fit the story in.
Let me ask you this: do you think that she would ever want to? Do you think she did that specifically because of probably the fan base that already knew about this? So
yeah, I think she could concede that she tried to focus on things that the fans would want, and that would be more the relationship. I really appreciate the storytelling of using those side stories to incorporate it. That really resonated with me, but I'm a very artsy person. But I don't know if most of the fans appreciated that as much as I think the general pop, like I did.
Well, also, you said earlier, this is a love letter to fans to begin with.
Absolutely.
It's a remake of an anime that's already been made.
Yeah, and so it was more important to get the meat of the story in than some of the smaller details of the storytelling elements.
I can see that.
I understand why they did it. I'm just disappointed that had to go.
Well, to be fair, it's always kind of like anything, I guess, that goes from that from manga into anime form, right? We all kind of have those issues. Like even Full Metal, like the example like James used with Full Metal Alchemist. You're reading that, and there's so much more that they throw into it. And they did a really good job with Brotherhood. I mean, an excellent job. But there's still always little things that they throw. They don't 100% go in there, and they don't go all the way through with it. I'm blanking on something right now, but I just know if I reread it and I did an in-depth look at it, there would probably be something like, oh, why didn't they put that in there? That's a pretty cool little detail, or vice versa. But it's just always that's the one downside I have with adaptations. They always have to make concessions.
Yes,
and they always have to make it more digestible for an average viewer that may have never even read the manga or seen the previous anime show or the television show or whatever it is. So, do you have similar kind of feelings as Kelly, James, or do you have anything extra to add? I know I'm interested.
Well, I've got similar feelings. I mean, I haven't sat down and read through much of the manga, but that was one of the things I didn't like as we went through the series. Like I already said, the way they broke up the sequences, the way they tried to let each character grow, but it was clear that they were still, the stories had been written with a different type of sequencing in mind. Like I said, what was jarring for me was that the emotional maturity of the individual characters would yo-yo from scene to scene, where, like I said, Yuki had his big arc and resolution pretty early on, like at the end of the first or second season, and Kyo didn't have his till the end of the fourth season because it was kind of the climax of the story. But what happens is that Yuki has this big growth moment, and then he proceeds to immediately ignore all of that and go back to acting like a jerk for the next season and a half.
I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean,
and then suddenly he's mature again, and it's kind of like that with all the other characters. Like Momoji also has another arc like that, which is kind of jarring.
I could see that a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isuzu, I suspect her whole story got pretty much dropped because she just kind of pops in and out, and then suddenly has a resolution at the end for Hatsuharu's sake. And so, like, some of these 12 characters obviously got less screen time than others.
Yes, and I think the biggest character that got gypped was definitely Yugi. Like, whole storylines of his got cut, and the sequence. Like, my favorite one was him resolving his relationship with Toru.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of actually having that scene, they just kind of gave a throwaway comment about it. Yeah. And it was really disappointing and upsetting to me.
Well, and this is kind of one of the differences between manga and anime as an art form. I feel like anime is better at showing and not telling. Like, if you have a good studio, they can pack so much information into the background scenes. Like Magus probably mentioned that one earlier. It's a good example of that.
Gorgeous.
There is so much going on and so many details. Like, there's obviously a rich world there, but they don't sit down and talk about it.
No, they don't.
Whereas in manga, they can tell a lot more, because you might have a 16-page manga, but each scene can have so much text attached to it. What would take 5 minutes in an animated show might be four panels or something on a manga. And so they can include a lot more explicit background, which has to be implicit in anime. But I feel like having a studio incorporate that takes a lot of time and energy and effort.
So I always kind of equated to, like you said, I very much say, if you guys liked the Lord of the Rings movies that came back out years and years ago, go read the books, because if you think that was a large amount of detail for a huge world, you have no idea. J.R.R. Tolkien was the king of overbuilding. He
dramatically overbuilt world.
Yes, he created languages for fun, people.
He made like 5 languages. He wrote an entire world history.
Maps.
He wrote
all
an
the
entire
stuff.
Cosmology, which no one ever even heard of. And I do that when I DM too, which is not great.
It's definitely a little bit of overplanning, but yeah, that's what I love about the written word and that kind of stuff. It's the amount of details they throw into it, but the difference that really kind of shows, like you said, the huge themes that they have throughout the theme. You get more in depth on the themes and the characters and everything else that's going on, as opposed to the manga where you just have broad strokes, essentially. It's more about, I feel like, but kind of digging into that a little bit. So themes, there are a lot of anime. There's always kind of themes. There's always a struggle and something like that. And so what are some of the major themes? Let's start with what's a major theme do you think is in this game?
The major theme in this is trauma and abuse and dealing with it.
Yep.
That's it comes off as like a romantic, you think it's more of a romantic comedy, but that's not really what this is. It's more
the first episode, maybe
like for the first episode.
The first episode, you're definitely like, oh, this is a lighthearted anime.
It's cute. It's bubbly. It's gonna be great. And
lies.
No,
I mean, that's not Gainax bad, but it's definitely there.
It's not. They have romantic elements in it, but it's really about dealing with trauma and abuse.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And they build on it well, and I think they portray it very well, while not getting too graphic and gritty about it.
Yeah, because you do see you'll see flashbacks of especially like you were saying, is it Yuki or Kairu, where they get physically abused? Which one?
It's Kyo and Yugi. Yugi, yes,
Yugi.
The flashbacks of Yugi being abused, and it portrays it more of how he felt from it, not the actual abuse.
Which
itself.
I feel like that's a lot more impactful than showing Skeleton Knight, showing just an egregious scene, showing oh, this person's about to get, I'm going to spoilers, it's in the first 10 seconds of the anime. Yeah. This person's about to get raped. Showing the trauma that comes from that act is so much more impactful than showing the actual act.
And that's the difference too between those two shows, right? Because in this, it's about Yuki and Kyo trying to overcome what they were essentially being conditioned as children to fulfill a role that Akito wanted them to fulfill, and the mental and physical abuse that goes with it. Something like Skeleton Knight, it's about contrasting the gritty situation with his own mental fantasy world that he's living in.
Mm-hmm.
So
And so
who is Akito for everybody that didn't hear that? So you want to?
Aikido is the or Aikido or Aikido. I forget.
That's okay. Either way,
Um,
we're Americans. We're gonna say everything wrong that's not in English.
he takes the place of the god of the Zodiac.
yes, he's the god of the Chinese Zodiac story.
Yep.
And so he is the head of the Soma household.
The family, essentially,
The family. And he has a very interesting storyline.
He has a lot of interesting personality traits too.
Interesting personalities. But
That's the word. I'm being nice right now, James.
You're being very charitable.
That's right. I will get into it later.
The majority of the story, Aikido is kind of the bad guy of the story.
Yeah, I mean he has to take that place because you have to have a bit of a protagonist in these. Not a protagonist. Is that antagonist in it? That's the word I was looking for. Sorry. Otherwise, you're not going to force people. You're not going to see these characters progress, and it's just kind of a basic trope, which is great for it. It's not a slice of life thing. So even slice of life, you still kind of have kind of an antagonist. Usually something dumb though, like they can't make themselves go outside and go to the grocery store because there's a guy there that they think is cute. It's like, okay, cool. Like that's, I guess the antagonist is their low self-esteem.
I mean, that's the ultimate antagonist, really.
Ain't that the truth? So I'm like, does this make me even look fat? And then I asked my wife that, and she goes, do you want me to answer that? And I was like, I will go change. So if I've ever asked my wife that, slap me now. But I just don't care anymore. But yeah, so the trauma is definitely a huge theme in this, and you definitely see it especially with the main character. I know Toru, hers is the most evident, in my opinion.
Toru is... Yeah, whereas...
She likes to pretend that she wasn't traumatized.
Well, Toru's traumatized, yes. But hers is...
She's sleeping in a tent, for Christ's sake.
And she's like, everything's okay with this? Okay. I'm happy.
Lies.
But Toru, she was, until recently, always loved and well cared for, and she wasn't abused.
Yeah.
Whereas the rest of the main characters, most of the semi-main characters... their trauma comes from abuse, and just kind of her going in there dealing with her own trauma and then helping everyone else deal with their own trauma and how the two kind of fit together.
Yeah. How they can kind of they correct me if I'm wrong, how they can fit together and they can build relationships and basically help each other move, I wouldn't say past it, but basically learn to cope with it.
Yeah, learn to cope with it, learn to deal with it, learn to forgive. And it's, I have like the theme of how impactful just one caring person coming into someone's life, one person who cares can make in so many people's lives, and just wanting better, and that this caring relationship you form doesn't necessarily have to be romantic.
No.
And that was another great theme in here, is that most of the characters don't form romantic relationships, and yet they have very caring, intimate relationships with each other.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, and you can chime in a little bit on this, James. Do you think that's a very distinctly Japanese kind of thought process?
No.
Because
Not at all.
okay, so I was curious about that because I was doing some research about this. I've noticed a lot of people were saying that it's a very Japanese thing to have because, it's not unheard of for, guys and gals to hang out and just literally just not expect anything. And it's more modern. It's very more of it's become very, very normalized in their modern society. But then over here, it feels like if you're not married and you're hanging out with somebody of the opposite sex, there's like an undertone of like, are we going to have a relationship at some point?
I know dating pressure is definitely a thing now. I know whenever we were in high school, it was already a thing where just hanging out with, random girls or guys on a one-on-one basis was getting to be kind of strange. You're either part of a big group or you were dating.
Yeah, see, I don't know about you, but there was tons of times I went over to Candace's house and just like hung out with her, and we played
the same thing. Growing up, like it was normal.
I think it was just
it is a normal thing to do, and I don't want to say that.
No,
that is normal humanity, but
yeah,
the cultural pressure to like be dating is
definitely
you do not have to have. I'm going to say this loud and proud to everybody. You do not have to have an intimate, like physical relationship with somebody if you just like spending time with them. You can just enjoy spending time with them. That's
very simple.
It's that's all it takes.
Yeah.
A common interest that you guys have with each other. Sit down, watch anime, or play video games. Go play soccer. Do outside stuff. Do whatever it is, and just enjoy that. And I think that's something that they really push hard in this anime. That, like you were saying, it's very much like, hey, we can enjoy each other's company, and we can help each other, and we can grow together, and we don't have to have anything physical with it.
Yes.
And that's why I love that theme in this 100%. So, but James, do you kind of feel similar about that, or
I definitely do. I was gonna drop some.
What are you gonna drop?
Other references. It's like almost like she's the salt of the earth, or a mustard seed planted in the ground.
All right, James. Well, we're not gonna.
I'm not gonna go there.
I'm not gonna go there.
Well, I was just thinking that whenever you mentioned, like, is this an exclusively Japanese thing? We know the idea of one person who cares having a big impact in someone's life.
Yep.
That's not fantasy. That's normal life. That's reality. I mean, to mention other work, like if you read like Man Child in the Promised Land, or a lot of these kind of gritty autobiography books, often it's one person really believing in someone that gives them the strength to get started. I mean, ultimately, change and maturity has to come from yourself, but having someone
100%
makes a big difference.
And I know you guys have.
Sometimes what it takes to get started. I mean, I know if my dad didn't have his foot about 6 feet up my butt, I would have gotten half as far as I did in life today.
Absolutely, and kind of jumping off that a little bit, I know Kelly probably has a similar situation. Somebody impacting her like that, but like for me, like my parents could have yelled at me till they were blue in the face, and I would have done nothing to improve myself, but that lady upstairs that she, took an interest in me, and I'm like, why does that person like me? Why does this really nice person like me? I'm a slob,
maybe I should try to be worthy of that feeling.
Exactly. And it's like, I have to raise myself to those standards, and kind of going into that a little bit, it's very much so you want to make yourself worthy of that. Right. And really digging in and trying to progress that and better yourself. No matter what. I've done that for the last, 15 years that we've been together, and you guys have seen it, and you guys have done the same thing for each other, and that's very much what relationships are all about, and basically how one person can change your life and basically kind of make you a better person.
That's the definition of a healthy relationship.
Yes. That is a very healthy relationship. Yeah, you push each other to become better, right?
That's what I tell young people today: is find someone who makes you more the person you want to be, because you're going to have a long time, and that tendency is going to win in the end, whether it's a good one or a bad one.
That is very, very true. So let me ask you about this, Kelly. Kind of jumping off that a little bit, or James even. I know I'm focusing a lot on Kelly right now, but then again, like I said, she's very much like all up in this because she loves it to death, and James is like, we could have talked about Evangelion
again.
This is good. We can mix it up.
No, I want to talk about Doom.
Why are you making me a poop?
You are.
I'm not being a duty head over here. No.
I'm not being a duty head. You sound like Mr. Poopy Butthead. Poopy Butthole.
That's it, Mr. Poopy Butthole is actually really positive.
He is very, very positive. Wee. So kind of jumping off that a little bit, Kelly, that I talked about that one single person basically kind of being able to change somebody's viewpoint or change them for the better. I kind of saw this. Do you think that Toro has that idea of radical love? I kind of what I called it. It's just radical love. She basically, no matter what, she will basically say that I will love you no matter how you treat me, kind of thing.
That is her response to trauma.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually a very unhealthy thing.
It's a bad thing.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is it a good thing? That's
how she responds to trauma.
And this is the main way she grows over the series, is she learns to be a little bit more selfish.
Yes.
She's self-sacrificing to the point of martyring herself for nothing. she would do anything for even a mild acquaintance to the point of ruining her own life, and it's not healthy. It's not good.
Yeah, the scene that really kind of did it for me. Isn't there a part? Is it who's the guy? Who's the god? The head of the family? I'm trying to remember the name. Akuto. There's a scene in there? Isn't there where he basically forces her down on her knees? Isn't there? Is it him? Is it her? Or is it somebody else? He basically just. Oh no, he belittles her.
Yeah, he
And
belittles
he
her.
basically calls her worthless, like just like basically nobody, basically.
Yeah.
And she essentially said, I still love you. So like, is that a? I know you said it's to a fault, right? And it's almost a bad thing.
Well, I'm a believer in radical forgiveness.
Yes.
Yeah.
The problem with what Toru does isn't that she forgives people and loves them anyway. I think that's something we should all be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Her problem is that she will continue to act to the point where she hurts herself.
Yes.
It's like she doesn't just give people emotional space. She doesn't just forgive them for their actions. She will continue to let them abuse her, regardless of what they do.
Yes.
So it's not saying, I forgive you, Akito. She's like, okay, I'm going to bend over and get ready to get whipped again.
Yes.
Like it's beyond forgiving someone. She's just she's inviting further abuse. She's enabling bad situations.
Is that kind of how you took it, Kelly?
Yes,
okay.
That's exactly how I took it. And there were many times there where she like overworks herself and that's her learning, like, as much as she's the hero of the story, she is also learning how to deal with her own trauma while helping others deal with their trauma. And so it is, even though it's portrayed as a good thing to love and be open and positive, but again, that's her response to trauma and conflict.
Yeah.
And there are lots and lots of people out there who do the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and I will admit, I know a certain somebody that does that sometimes, and it's taken and it takes years, and it's not like an anime. It takes years for you to get over that, because just like all personality traits, it takes years to kind of grow from that and kind of be a little selfish sometimes, especially with that. It's important to be a little selfish, right?
With Toru too, because I know you mentioned her trauma was more recent and that her mother had died.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think something they left unspoken in the anime, and maybe was more present in the manga, was I suspect she had a somewhat neglectful upbringing. Her mother definitely loved her and was there with her, but she was also a single mom in a Japanese society, which is very work-oriented.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the pressure that Toru feels to always be happy, to always have things done, like she always has to cook, she always has to have clean. To me, that speaks towards a kid who was trying to make sure everything was perfect for the 10 minutes she had with mom every day.
Yes, and that's definitely the case.
And that's like a self-sacrifice. You see this a lot in girls and boys who grow up having to be the adult too soon, where they feel pressure to have things ready, to have things done, and that their job is to make everyone around them happy.
Yeah, I can see that.
That was definitely the case, because a little bit of spoilers, but
that's fine.
Her father died when she was very young,
and
her dad's family like abandoned her and her mom. And so, but yeah, anyway, like so her mom had to raise her by herself with no support.
And then, like you said at the very beginning of the anime, her mom has passed away, and so she's living on her own, right?
Yeah.
Well, and she is so focused on not being a burden to the people around her that she would rather leave the house she was in and live in a tent in a field.
Well, no, they were kicking her out.
Yeah. You remember that?
So what happens at the beginning is that after her mom dies, she goes and lives with her one relative that showed care the whole time, which is her grandfather. But he's older and can't really do much. And he is also living with his children. Yeah. And his children kick her out because they're doing remodeling.
I think it's primarily her aunt, which is her father's sister, right? Yeah. That's what it was.
Yeah. Kicks her out, and it was supposed to be temporary, and she was supposed to go live with her friends, but she's like, oh, I don't want to be a burden to my friends, and so decides to buy a tent and live in a random woods randomly.
Yeah. which is how she
Rather
falls
than-
into the Soma
rather than
family.
ask a friend for help. She'd
Yes.
rather live in the woods and be by herself.
And I think it's just a testament, though. It's like to see that, you know, how far out of her way she's willing to do that, to just get to like not be a burden. But like when you see her towards the end of the anime, it's she's, I wouldn't say she's cured. I mean, you're never cured from trauma, right? You're always going to have it behind you a little bit. I think she definitely learns, like you said earlier, she learns that self-care is important,
Boundaries are
like you said, boundaries
boundaries
and
and saying no, and
Yep.
sometimes the best thing to do for someone is to say no. I'm not going to support that.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately what she learned is that having people take care of you is part of them loving you and is part of them being able to heal and have a relationship with you. And I think when she realized that, then she started standing up for herself and letting people help and protect her.
I will totally agree with that. So, really interesting thing I want to kind of put out there that that the author Takia actually said, she was going on record to actually say that when she created Toru with the intent of balancing out like masculine and feminine traits, which I kind of want to go into this a little bit more, but most obviously found in Toru's masculine name. So apparently Toru is very much a more of a masculine name.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't pick up on that,
Yes.
but that's a Japanese thing, I guess.
I did research,
Yeah,
James.
no, I believe you. I'm just saying I missed that context
Yes.
entirely.
And so she does that because I think it's kind of like a juxtapose. Like even though she has a very kind of a more of a masculine name, she's, I guess some people would say she's got more effeminate traits,
Yeah, she's
as it was
more hyper feminine.
very much. I have to take care of somebody. I have no matter what, and I guess in their society, that's very much what I guess women are expected to do.
Yeah.
If you're old school, I guess. But she kind of learns to she slowly over time becomes more of a modern woman, I guess you would say. And I guess you kind of see that in all cultures. I mean, do you guys see that a lot? Would you see that's very kind of a thing that you would see maybe? Or what are you thinking, James? You're wiggling your head around like you don't think so.
Well, I think the old-fashioned to modern thing was a bit of a stretch. I think it's
Okay.
more about just her own personality problem.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean,
I'm talking about
the role she assumes in the family is definitely a very traditional feminine one. Like she cooks,
Okay.
she cleans, and they frame it in that this is the work she's doing for getting free board. Though they also say that the Somas are filthy rich and they wouldn't care to put her up for nothing.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But that's something she was doing because she felt like she had to contribute, and that's the only way she could contribute. But like the way she feels the need to care for everybody. Yeah, that's
Okay, so let me ask you
definitely a
this.
trait you find much more commonly in women than men.
So let me ask you this. So going off of that a little bit, do you feel like the author is she trying to kind of break down Japanese female stereotypes a little bit?
I think so, a little bit. I definitely with not just Toru's character, but some of the other characters.
Yeah.
I think she's trying to explore the roles of both men and women, because there's definitely characters that do untraditional things, especially some of the men do some very feminine things, especially with how they dress and how they behave.
Mhm.
And so, there's definitely an exploration of men and women's roles in the story.
Yeah, you get some characters like Shigure and Hatori who have very much like traditional Japanese male, at least like positions in society and what they're doing. You get some people like Momoji and what's the snake guy's name?
I cannot remember for the life of me, I'll be honest with you.
Yugi's brother.
Yuki's brother, who have very obviously feminine characteristics.
Yes.
And then you get some girls like Isuzu and Machi to some extent who are assuming very masculine, kind of piggish behavior for their age. Yeah, the author is definitely playing with these masculine, feminine stereotypes, and
Rules,
I think that probably hits a lot harder on a Japanese audience because there is a much heavier cultural emphasis on being fitting into your slot in the community,
your role,
fit your role, and conform. And I know that is part of the reason why the suicide rate in Japan is so high, is because people who don't think they can conform have issues.
Yeah, and I think that's why I think it's a little bit more. I think why this anime is a lot more. I feel like it's a lot bigger here in the U.S. than it is in Japan. I think it's definitely big in Japan.
Yeah.
I think it just hit a lot harder home because we're very much about. I don't know. This is just my viewpoint
These
coming
themes
as an
are
American.
like the personal discovery,
Personal-
self-actualization themes.
Yes, very much an American. Like if you're born in the United States, actualization is a huge theme
Yes.
about what our country tries to push forward.
Yeah.
And in Japan, it's very much like conformity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like if you don't, like you said earlier, James, if you don't fit within those specific roles, you're kind of seen as an outcast a
Yeah,
little bit.
And that's a kind of a theme.
People feel like they don't
Not
have
a
any
purpose.
recourse, which is something you definitely see in the U.S. too. I don't want to say that doesn't exist here. Too,
No,
but,
it's just.
But there are not nearly as many outlets or people who are going to encourage you to not be part of the role which you've fallen into. Whatever.
I think there's a lot more support. I feel like, and a lot more support that's not just family oriented as well, though. Too, there's a lot like there's helplines, crisis lines, all these things that you can basically find.
To the U.S. is to the point where, with minimal effort, you can find people who will support you in doing some downright stupid things.
I believe it. Yeah.
Like, people will support you 100% in making some
Prime example: Johnny Knoxville, Jackass the movie.
Yeah,
there you go.
People will support you in making some incredibly poor life choices.
Yes,
that's very true.
Like if you get on Reddit and ask for advice, you're going to get bad advice.
Yes.
That's right. What should I do with my phone? Put it in your microwave. Probably a bad idea.
Or it's like, I just did X, Y, or Z. Should I tell my parents? It's like, the answer is yes, but they're going to tell you no.
Yeah, it's like, come on, guys. So, so let me ask you let's go back a little bit to the kind of swaying of roles or the way that some of the other characters are portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that really stood out to you specifically in the anime, Kelly, that kind of made you go, oh, that's kind of a weird way to frame that, or a weird way to portray certain characters? Like, I know for me, here's an example for me. There's that one arc in the anime, or in the one arc in the manga, where they make Yuki, I believe it's Yuki. They make the class basically makes him dress up as a schoolgirl.
They make him dress up as a girl for the festival,
and they call him cute.
Yes.
And so I think that also, but the thing I've been reading a little bit of, I feel like that has a different connotation in Japanese than it does in the U.S. So.
Yes.
If I'm like, oh, you look cute today, Kelly, or you look cute today, James, different connotation. If they say that in like Japan, in the way that, and like I said, language is amazing. Like simple phrases and the way things are, they can mean totally different things in different cultures.
I think where that hits is probably closer to like calling someone a sissy.
Essentially, yeah.
In America,
and that's what that's what I was reading is like, apparently when you say, oh, that's very cute, it's not a compliment. It's more of a put down.
Yeah.
And do you remember kind of what...
something directed at small children or sometimes at girls.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, you were talking about how Toru has a masculine name. Well, Yugi has a feminine name. Yugi is normally a girl's name. And so that is something he struggles with.
Yeah, and he's I think he's very much... he's embarrassed by it a little bit, and whenever they do that to him in the class, she takes it upon herself, Toru, and she basically says, "What's wrong with being cute?" Essentially,
yes,
right? She goes,
she stands up.
Stands up for him, and I think that's one of the good points where she kind of learns that standing up for somebody is a good thing, right? Mm-hmm. Standing up for them and trying to basically say, if as long as you're okay with how you feel and how you look, it's okay, right? Mm-hmm. It shouldn't matter what other people call you, Yeah. It's kind of like if I were to call James, oh, you're a big, hairy, mammoth-looking man. Yeah. You don't give two shits.
I don't.
You don't care. So, and that is
certain. Then again, I'm an adult man. I'm in my 30s.
That's right.
You're not time to get over some of this stuff.
I'm sure if you were a teenager,
if I was 15 or 16, I would have been a lot more upset.
Yeah. You're like, why would David say something like that? He's a round, pudgy butt face. So, which is probably true at that point.
Yes.
But that's a good point though, because she's standing out for him and him just being who he is.
Yeah.
In a situation he doesn't even want to be in.
Yeah.
100%. And like, I don't even know why I was.
Yuki has some of those same tendencies too. He's not ready to tell people no either.
Yes.
Like he has. That's where they show kind of more feminine aspects of his personality. He's not really choosing his own path. He's not really doing his own thing. He's playing the role that's been laid out for him, and he's being dominated by someone who's assumed a masculine role in his life, Akito.
Yes, very much so. So, what do you? Is there anything, like I said earlier? I was asking earlier, because anything like that really stands out? Here, let me rephrase it even a better way. Too, are there any really stellar moments within the anime or manga that you see where two characters really help push each other and build each other? Kind of like that a little bit.
Yeah. One that immediately comes to mind is actually two minor characters that get introduced later on are Machi and
You're trying to figure out which one.
Machi and Kikero.
Which Zodiacs are they, real quick?
Little spoiler.
That's fine.
They're siblings.
Oh, yeah.
And they've been raised to kind of be antagonistic towards each other, and about how one of them's like, nope, I'm not doing that, and like insists on a good relationship, and I like just him defying all that and insisting that we're siblings, we're gonna act like siblings. And it like everyone just didn't understand that, and I thought that was a really good like standing up, because up until this point a lot of family relationships in this series have either been like super good and super strong, like Toru and her mom, or extremely negative.
Yeah.
And this is one where these two siblings are, one doesn't want a relationship and the other one really does, and just them kind of
polar
opposites coming together and define defying social norms in this situation. Yeah. And I thought that was really good in that situation.
I'll let you think on that a little bit, James. Come up with another one, Kelly. James, can you think of any of them at all? Maybe something that really popped out towards you a little bit all? And I'm going to put you guys on the spot here.
I've got to think of a good one.
He's like, I've got to think.
Hatsuharu and Isuzu have an interesting relationship, and Isuzu has very self-destructive, like pig-headed behavior, and Hatsuharu, like part of his whole character shtick is that he is much younger than the rest of the cast, but in a lot of ways he's more mature than a lot of them. So he's like someone who grew up too fast. But he does a really great job of being a rock for Isuzu. Like he is the mature adult of the situation who is kind of wearing the
even
just
far
bearing the brunt
of
her pigheadedness and her lashing out. Hatsuharu, in a lot of ways, he is kind of the character who comes into things already pretty self-actualized. He is by far and away the most mature of the entire cast, I would say.
Even compared to some of the adults in the series, because most of the characters are high school students.
Yeah.
But
he is the one who's calm. He's behaving as an adult. He knows what he wants. He knows how he's going to get it. What he wants is Isuzu, and he's being patient, and he's helping her, and he's boosting her up. But I thought he was actually probably the best male role model in the entire series.
Well, but he does have a fatal flaw. He flies into rages.
He's got a huge temper. Which they have like an episode for that, but they downplay it in the anime. I wonder.
They do. He does go into rages much more in the manga. Well, another one is the same character, Akiro, and Yuki's relationship. Yep. He was another Akiro. Just went like, all right, we're best friends, and they're best friends.
Yeah.
And whether or not Yuki wanted learned that, like, in fact, he didn't want that, and just how much that helped Yugi to have, because at this point he had basically Toru, and that was it, like intimate friends, and then all of a sudden having a positive male relationship that he didn't have to compete with. And like that was a really like great moment.
I like that.
Of development, like how important male intimate relationships are.
Yeah, and that is true. That's something that a lot of guys could get out of this show is that it's okay to have. I know this is a really dumb thing to say, but like a lot of guys think whenever two guys are just hanging out and like they're just dicking around, they're like, "Oh, you guys spend all the time with each other." Oh, like no homo, blah blah blah. Like that's something that guys would say a lot. It's not even about that.
Yeah.
It's not even about that anymore. It's literally like, hey, like kind of going back to what we said earlier. I simply like to spend time with this guy.
Yeah.
And it's like I could legit. You made fun of us a little bit, Kelly, because you're like, James and Dave, what are you gonna do? Are you guys gonna go out and do something? Like, no, we're gonna go downstairs and play Pokemon. You're like, isn't that a one-player game? James is like, yeah. And you're like, what's David gonna do? And I'm like, I'll probably just sit there and watch.
It's fine.
I'm like, I'm literally okay. And then later on, James is like trying to figure out how to catch all the wisps in Arceus, legends. And I'm like, I'll just look it up.
Yeah, that was great.
That was an hour and a half of our lives that I was perfectly fine with, and that's the kind of thing that I think a lot of guys they get afraid of doing a little bit.
Yes.
Don't just spend time together, and it's one of the toxic parts of male culture.
100%.
Men either have to be doing an explicit activity together, like we're going to a ball game or we're going to do whatever.
Do manly things.
Or it has to be heavily lubricated with alcohol, which
Yes.
is not healthy either.
No.
Like, there are lots of guys who, okay, we go out and I hang out with the guys. It's like, you sit on your back porch and drink 30 cans of beer at night. It's not a healthy way to hang out.
No.
I mean...
that's definitely an American thing. I would agree with that. It's like going out, and it's actually more of a... I've seen in other cultures too, but
men aren't able to let down their shells.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a problem. It's a big
And that is
problem.
actually, now that I think of it, a recurring theme
Yeah.
in the relationships of all the male characters.
Well,
here.
this is a Japanese problem too. Is that they also have this idea of like men have to meet expectations, and you're not supposed to show your feelings.
And as opposed to, it's the same kind of thing. Like she's looking at the author really looks at the stereotypes, right? Men can't, they can't talk about their feelings. And I make a joke at the very beginning of the show, right? Men can't talk about their feelings, but women are expected to do everything and fix all the problems, right?
Yes.
She kind of tries to tackle these two major themes
Mhm.
throughout the whole season or the whole show and the whole manga, and I think she does a very good job
Yeah,
at
I
kind of
think
breaking
she
that
does
out
a
quite a
very
bit.
good
I think this is what makes it such an enduring series. I mean, there's lots of things which are fun for a while, but whenever you see something that's a classic, it's because it touches something core to humanity, and that's what she's done.
Yeah. And not going too much deeper into it, guys.
Oh, and one last thing, like the one non-traumatized character I felt in the whole thing was the weird kid in the series.
Which weird kid? we talking about?
Her one of her best friends.
Oh, okay. I'm
Yeah.
talking about now. Yeah.
She was perfectly sane, healthy,
The
but
one
she
who
was
like, it wasn't clear whether she was actually
psychic or not. Yeah.
Yeah. You're just looking at her like, this is really weird. Like she's just doing things, like not even thinking about it. You're just like, that was kind of this bizarre child. So
I guess one thing I would point out too is we mentioned Akito being the antagonist.
Yeah.
Without spoiling too much, the relationship between Shigure and Akito, in a lot of ways, plays counterpoint to what's going on with the rest of the characters.
Yes.
While everyone else is growing up and getting better, Shigure is using his position to actively make things worse for Akito.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
And he's trying to force them into a mold that they don't necessarily want to be in. Now, it kind of, quote unquote, works out in the end because it's a positive ending for the series. But what he's doing emotionally is pretty cringe.
yeah, that's true. And
Cringe is not a heavy enough word. It's pretty bad. And
it's downright almost
it's pretty awful.
And
like,
abusive in a
as it
sense.
becomes clear
Yes.
over time what Shigure's ultimate goal is for the situation, like is that their relationship plays counterpoint to all the good things that are happening for everybody else.
Yep. And
So I don't want to spoil the ending or the major revelation. I think you
exactly.
you get what I'm putting down
Yes.
here.
I will 100% agree with that. So I feel like we've kind of fleshed out quite a bit here today. Is there anything you want to
Yes.
talk about? I see Ion.
Yes.
Oh, he's got notes.
She has notes. I don't know if you guys can't see this, but she's got at least 4 or 5 pages of notes on there. So that's good. So what else do you want to bring up? before we get going?
Well, there is one like major issue with the story I have.
Yeah.
Even both in the manga as well. That I think, especially before you let kids read it, you need to address, and that is actually Toru's mother's and father's relationship.
Yeah.
So, Toru's mother and her father met when Toru was in middle school, and Toru's father was her teacher. And so I understand how it kind of works in Japan because you're considered an adult when you're 13 years old.
Yeah.
And so she was about that age when they met.
It's still not normal.
But it's still not normal, and it's still not appropriate, and that is like the biggest thing about the series I don't like.
And the way that his entire family treats her mom as damaged goods after he dies tells you how the rest of the family view that relationship too. So it's clear no one approved the situation.
Yeah.
So that's something I wanted to put. Whenever you brought that up, that's important to note. So even though it is technically it's not against the law in Japan, socially, people really do not. They really you're going to date somebody that's in their like a 13-year-old and you're significantly older than them. A lot of people are like, that's disturbing, that's gross, and they actually will, like you said, ostracize them essentially.
It's still like in the U.S. There's plenty of states where
the only difference is, like you said, one they'll ostracize you. Here in the U.S., you'll go to jail and you'll be on a sex offender's list for the rest of your life.
Even in the U.S., though, there's plenty of states where you can marry a 13 or 14-year-old with quote-unquote parental consent.
Yeah, which is wrong.
Which is wrong, and we treat it wrong, rightfully so, but if you looked at the laws in our books, it doesn't necessarily carry the entire weight.
And it should, in my opinion, but without getting super political on that end.
Yeah.
So
I'm just pointing out that this thing in Japan isn't that different from what we have here.
Yes.
It's definitely not. Yeah. It would definitely,
And added on to that is that, he was her teacher. Me as a teacher, he got a position of authority, and that whole moralness and about how everyone just kind of accepted that. And I didn't like that part of the story. I mean, I kind of understand why it was there, sort of, but I also feel like it hindered the story overall. It hindered the message of the bigger story. And I understand it did help set up Toru's mom, but
Do you think that the author is trying to make a point about why they basically make a point of saying this is wrong, look what it's done to this woman, and look what it's done to Toru because of this. Look what everything bad has basically come from this relationship.
I mean, she definitely
the problem is that anything about Toru's mom is always presented through Toru or through her friends because they're the only ones that really knew her very intimately. Yeah. And those stories are always presented with rose-colored glasses. Like, this woman could do no wrong. She was always good. Even the bad things she did were seen as good, portrayed or justified as good things.
I can't say that about anybody's mom.
Yeah. And so, I mean, rightly so, but it didn't make it clear whether or not that was a good thing or a bad thing when it happened.
Oh, I thought it was crystal clear, but that was, I guess, me as an adult watching the series.
But they didn't address that in the anime at all, because they didn't have her story at all.
Oh, just from how they showed how she acted around Toru, where she was always trying to be perfect for Toru.
Yeah, they did the better job of that in the anime
they showed
than they did in the manga,
guess to me, as a full-grown adult, I know that if that's how she's acting around her daughter, the flip side is true. What I picked up was this is a desperate single mom who has already had a really shitty kind of life or running things, who's trying her very best for her kid. And I picked up on how much this had hurt her life. But
it's heavily romanticized
in
the way it's portrayed. And so this is actually a thing that happens regularly in anime in general, especially the teacher-student sexualization dynamic that I feel very uncomfortable with, because as a teacher myself, I find it very uncomfortable, and I don't like how prevalent it is. And so,
if it makes you feel better, I had a discussion with Jackie about this long because for everybody, my wife is a high school teacher. She told me, she goes, "Have you seen some of these high school boys nowadays?" And I go, "What are you talking about?" She said it like that because she was being honoring. And she goes, and I go, "What are you talking about?" She goes, they're disgusting. They smell funny. They fart. They don't know how to bathe. She goes, why would anybody, she goes, why would anybody want it like my age want to be with this thing? Because we had brought this up because apparently it was like somewhere a female teacher had been busted because she had been having a romantic relationship with one of these,
Yes.
17, 18-year-old boys. And I told her about it and she was like, no. She's like, that's awful. It's so disgusting. Like she goes, it wasn't even the simple fact. She goes, not about the act. She was simply like, just no. They're so immature. They're so dumb.
Well,
why?
Because she's a well-adjusted person with reasonable amounts of self-esteem. It's about the power trip, is what it's about.
That's exactly what it is.
I can tell you that.
It just.
And
I can see it being overemphasized in anime. I can see it being kind of making you feel uncomfortable. I can totally understand that.
And because again, Toru didn't really remember her dad very well.
Yeah.
The only positive experience she has with her father's family is through her grandpa, but like again, his story isn't really told. His reasonings, he's kind of a like afterthought almost, and so like I just don't think it's fully.
Do you think that's something that they would?
Out.
Do you think that? Let me ask you this because
I'm hoping they do flush that out a lot more in
the new series. That's going to be.
I really do
because it's going to be all about her mom, right?
It's going to be all about her mom.
That'd be fun,
and I think that'd be a great opportunity to do that.
So we will come back to you guys whenever that comes back out, probably because I'm sure Kelly is just going to inhale that series when it comes out.
Yes.
Well, guys, I just want to say we're wrapping it up a little bit. I just want to say thanks, Kelly, for showing up today and just giving us a lot of insights that I think that would have been sorely missed if you wouldn't have been here.
Yes.
Is there anything you guys want to add before we head out here? Because I know we definitely have gone long-winded on this one, which is a good thing sometimes. So
yeah, this was a good talk.
A lot of deep subject matter. Like I said, and if you guys liked our conversation, because I know we didn't go over a lot of the heavy arching plot themes or plot and stuff like that, go check it out. Check out the manga. You can get it at any manga retail store. Go to your resale bookstore. I'm sure they have some of them there. It's a great place to get these. Get the first couple of novels. If you want to watch it, check it out on any of the streaming sites they have. Yeah, Crunchyroll, Funimation's going bye-bye. You have to go to Crunchyroll to watch it. If you can't afford it, I'm sure you guys will find a way to see it.
For now, you can still do Crunchyroll with ads. I don't know how long that's going to last. I'm guessing that might be going away at some point.
Yeah, we'll see.
For now, you can still do Crunchyroll with ads. At least for the subs.
And again, like I read this when I was in high school. Just knowing what I know about the maturity of high school students, I would even say that this is a borderline. Like for a mature high school student, yes. For an immature one, this would not be the series for them, even the anime, because it does deal very heavily with trauma, abuse, and of course the inappropriate sexual relationship.
Or at the very minimum, if you're going to watch it in your high school setting,
watch it with them so you can talk about it. And I do. This is one that I would heavily recommend pre-screening for parents.
Yeah, or definitely at least having a parent with you while you watch it, so you can have a discussion afterwards.
Yeah,
much like we're doing right now.
Yes, especially when a kid who was raised well might realize for the first time how incredibly common all these different types of trauma are.
Yes.
Yep. So, but yeah, that's a little bit, like I said, about Fruits Basket. Go check it out, guys. If there's anything you guys have question-wise, just hit us up. I don't know what we're going to do next time, James. We're still kind of got that one in the basket.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, just a little update on things, guys, episode-wise, though, before we get out of here. I think probably in the next few months or so, I will be going back to a normal person schedule, not having as much taking up my time, as it were, for classes and whatnot. So I will hopefully start kicking these out maybe like once or maybe twice a month. I think we're going to start off with. We'll probably have more of a news-oriented segment during one part of the month, and then the next one during the month. I think we're going to probably maybe do more of something like we did today, where it's a little bit more in depth, which I would be okay with.
I would like that much better. I think that would be better. That'd be
kind of find a happy medium because we've been kind of wiggling, waggling back and forth about what we really wanted.
We
So
spend so much time talking about news that we don't really cover our topics, and yeah, I think this will be a healthier medium.
Yeah.
I think that would be fun. So, but yeah, guys, if you like that idea, just hit us up over on all of our social medias and the email. All right, well, I think we're going to get out of here today, guys. James, Kelly, thanks for showing up again. And yeah,
no problem.
Bye,
Thanks for
guys.
having us.
Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.
If you're interested in keeping up to date with new episodes on our channel, add us on any of your favorite podcasting apps, or subscribe to our YouTube channel at Seriously Pointless Conversations. If you have questions or concerns, please email us at seriouslypointlessconvo@gmail.com. We appreciate any feedback. Thank you for listening to our show.